Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the big stories around the world relevant to the Sikh community. And in the United States, we look at reaction to the successful passing of SB 509, a huge step forward in the fight against India's transnational repression. And here in the UK, as reflected in North America and indeed across Europe, the battleground between left, right and indeed the poor Sikh community, seemingly caught in the middle, is becoming not just muddled, murky and dark, but information, misinformation and manipulation have now become the norm. We'll take a look at the latest fractures breaking apart Western society from a European perspective and how the Sikh community is itself being both divided and duped by the establishment. All this and more on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Angus, something I noticed today was that with your new studio set up there, it is looking sharp, but it's also greatly improved the quality of the short videos when they're transferred to the short format. So that's amazing, and I think that our viewers will appreciate it too, because it's a very clear, crisp image now and looking good as we move towards those live shows. Angus, we're getting closer and we're getting excited.
Indeed, we absolutely are. And apologies for those who might have heard yesterday, if you watched the show yesterday. Of course, we lost me partway through or towards the end. And Amarkaira commented, I didn't realise when we put the show together and uploaded it, that in fact you could hear me in the background ranting and some quite interesting language. So apologies for that. But of course, you can understand my frustration. There's this wretched thing. I couldn't get the audio to work. Anyway, hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got it working today. So for today's show, as always, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And indeed, at the end of the show today, we'll take a look at loads of those great comments. So thank you for those. Right, James, let's get underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, the bright side, Angus, was that they got your perspective on technology.
Indeed, they did, and it wasn't pleasant.
But moving along, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some stories developing around the globe, of course, of significance and importance to the Sikh community, but also to other minority groups as well. And of course, spearheading the initiatives to make change is, as always, the Sikh community standing up not just for themselves, but for other minority groups. And they are making some headway in terms of making things better on a global scale. Now, we're going to start here in Canada, in my local community of Surrey, British Columbia, where we've spoken about the transnational repression. We've spoken about the gang problem with the Bishnoi gang, among others, and of course the extortion rings that have been plentiful. Now, it has come out in updates and a new announcement by the Surrey RCMP, the Surrey Police Service, Canada Border Services, the National RCMP, and provincial law enforcement, among many others, that they have now formed a new task force here in British Columbia that is going to target these individuals. And even the mayor of Surrey has been very active in going after these gangs that are perpetrating these, what right now is looking at 77 cases of extortion that are happening in the Lower Mainland area and mostly in Surrey, just in that one area alone. So, of course, it has become a major issue that we've been following very closely. Now, in addition to this 40-member task force where the police are going to be coming after them in full speed, they are also announcing other initiatives. Now, of course, the 40-officer task force is also going to hit right up to the federal level of the Canadian Border Services, and they are going hard. Now, with that said, the federal government has also decided to throw in financial support in the sum of $200,000 to $300,000 for additional programs on top of this task force to help support the task force in going after the Bishnoi gang, among others. Now, this has been seen as a major development, that it has been a lot of talk up till now, but this is actual boots on the ground and action being taken. So finally, it's moved past the speaking and planning stages, and there is actual action being taken. Now, the scale of the crisis necessitated this escalated response. The Surrey Police Service alone is actively investigating 45 distinct extortion threats. And as I said, there are others in Delta, Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, Maple Ridge, all around the Lower Mainland. That brings it up around 70 from my understanding of the current numbers. 27, though, of the 45 in Surrey alone have involved targeted shootings at homes and businesses. So it shows that over 50% of the time that these extortion attempts are being played out, there is violence and shooting involved at these targets. Now, of course, we know that there have been deaths, there have been arsons, there have been cars that have been ruined, not only physically through smashing of the vehicles themselves with bats or whatever, but also through arson in addition to that. Now, the business owners and residents have been receiving those demands for large sums of money, and often they're followed by the threats and then the actions. And a lot of times it's taking place on WhatsApp and other secure applications online in order to help the criminals to disguise where they're calling from and to basically clone or disguise their numbers. This is a big issue that the police are now going to be equipped with more members and more resources to go after them and to be able to trace these. Now, over this multi-jurisdictional task force that's being formed, as I said, there is the Delta Police, Abbotsford, Surrey, Vancouver, Metro Vancouver Transit, the Canadian Border Services, the Special Enforcement Unit of the Combined Forces with the RCMP. So they are going hard after them. And a lot of politicians, including our Public Safety Minister, Nina Cregar, was there to make this a huge announcement. Now, in addition, they have also launched an action fund that's going to be available to help to not only offer rewards for the prosecution of these individuals responsible, but they are also going to have a fund available for anyone who works with the police to get them information and essentially become snitches, as some people call them. But at the same time, they are looking to make their community in the diaspora safer, not only for the Sikh community, but for others from South Asian communities that are subject to this. Now, as this goes on, there is, of course, different programs, different resources, and we'll have a breakdown of the numbers of officers and the different programs and initiatives that are being enveloped into all of these programs and this latest target on the transnational repression, on the foreign interference, but most of all on these gangs that are trying to get away with extortion. And as the Surrey, BC Mayor, Brenda Locke, stated very clearly, that this may be a transnational issue when it comes to crime, but make no doubt about it, it is happening on Canadian soil, and she, as a part of the City of Surrey's leadership, are going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to hunting these people down and holding them accountable and taking this battle to the next level to make sure that the resources are available to law enforcement to make it happen. Now, as we look at that, of course, there is a great deal more information that we'll have on our Substack. But right now, let's move on to the next story. And that is later today at the Indian Consulate in Vancouver. The Khalistan movement, as well as other Sikh organizations, are ready to seize what they're calling the consulate. And this is in response to the re-engagement of the consular services and the representatives being reassigned for both the consulate in Vancouver and, of course, Canada's consulate in Delhi. So on that reciprocal agreement, they are bringing back the diplomatic representatives to each nation and trying to forge a path forward in order to deal with the political fallout from a lot of the transnational repression and, of course, the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, at the consular building in Vancouver today, Sikhs for Justice, among other groups, have warned anybody that is looking to conduct business at the India consulate in Vancouver to reconsider and possibly reschedule if at all possible. And when they say seize the consulate, as you can see in the images that we've shown in the past and today, the groups go, and it is a peaceful protest, but they basically make it difficult or uncomfortable for people to go into the building at Sinclair Center to participate in activities with the consular services. But again, it has always been a peaceful protest, and that should be not misinterpreted when they call it a siege, because of course we know that the Hindutva media is going to spin it to make it look like it's some big violent clash, when it really isn't. It is about holding India accountable for their transnational repression and the extrajudicial deaths that are happening on Western soil. Moving along over in your part of the world, Angus, of course, there are some updates on the hate violence and the demand for justice, especially as it comes to the outrage and fear with a woman being brutally raped and it being racially motivated. Now, just a quick update on that, the individual that was in custody did appear in court and was released on bail pending further inquiries. This, of course, is while police are still searching for the second reported assailant. Personally, if it was up to me, I would definitely hold this person in custody until we find the second person. Give him a little motivation, as they call it, to open his mouth and start spilling the beans, as they say, to give them the name of his co-conspirator or his co-accused. And I think that to release him into the community without giving up his partner in crime is just a slap in the face, not only to the victim in this particular matter, but in all of public safety when it comes to the Midlands and all of the UK. Again, you need to hold people accountable, and unfortunately there are regulations, laws, and restrictions that prohibit judges from using bail as a basically a penalizing system. Instead, it's there to make sure that they appear in court, that they're not a public safety threat. So again, it is a difference of opinion, what I think they should do, but also I'm realistic in knowing what the law and what the regulations prohibit. So again, it creates that vacuum of both sides. Moving on, though, we're going to take a look at the United States now, back on this side of the ocean. In the U.S., of course, there are different challenges that are being set. Congratulations to California in their passing of a bill that is going to further equip law enforcement with the education and training, as well as the resources to go after transnational repression and politically motivated crimes on U.S. soil, and particularly here throughout the state of California. Now, of course, this has been seen as a massive win for the communities, various diasporas, and they are not directly, in terms of the new law and the new bills, do not specifically name the Sikh community, but of course we know that it has a big impact there. Now, on the other hand, the Hindu diaspora is very much up in arms when it comes to those who support the RSS and the Hindutva and such movements, because they feel that it may give them a disadvantage when they want to speak out against the khalistan movement or otherwise, and that they may be targeted by law enforcement unfairly for speaking out that way and having it mislabeled as a politically driven crime as opposed to just speaking out their opinions against the referendum. So again, it comes down to the ability of the law enforcement to have the skills, training, and ability to differentiate between those two. And I really believe and trust that this bill is a move forward and that the training will take that into account. And I think that a big part of it is that law enforcement and politicians are trying to incorporate the concerns of all different diasporas in the processing of the training information to make sure that it is well balanced and it is fair for everyone on all sides. Now we're going to take a look also at a grandmother in chains. As we say, the family in the U.S. is fighting for a 73-year-old Sikh matriarch who's been detained by ICE after 30 years in the United States. Now, the Harjit Kaur, a 73-year-old Sikh grandmother, was arrested and detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, that sent a shockwave of fear and disbelief through the Northern California community. Her case has become a poignant symbol of the precarious existence of long-term undocumented residents, even those who have diligently complied with authorities for years. Now, in this particular case, I say young lady, but she's not so young, but we'll give her that. In any event, though, she has been taken into detention. And it should be noted that she was taken into detention while she had an appointment at the ICE offices in San Francisco. She has been keeping up with her appointments. She has been following through on all of her obligations. She has not been out there committing crimes. She has not been out there, doing anything absurd. She is a 73-year-old lady. She has lived in the country for 30 years. She has followed the rule of law and legislation in terms of where she needs to report, what she needs to do, and, just going through all of the requirements. And then they turn around and they throw her into detention at 73 years old. I find just disgusting. I find it apparent that the ICE system needs to have some retooling and a little bit of compassion. And I think that that is severely lacking when you balance compassion and logic with the reality of what's happening on the ground. It really upsets me that way. Now, let's jump quickly over to India and Pakistan. Of course, the India subcontinent has some major distresses going on when it comes to the Sikh diaspora, but let's take a look at the one that I see of big importance here, and they're all important, but I'm just trying to keep up with our time tonight. Now, of course, New Delhi has banned Sikh pilgrims from the Kartarpur shrine. Yes, they are closing the border, and they are using it as a political and emotional tool to go after the Sikh community. Now, by banning them from traveling to Pakistan to visit the Kartarpur Sahib Gurdwara, one of the faith's most sacred sites, I might add, and they are looking to go there for the upcoming birth anniversary of Guru Nanak. Now, of course, this decision was announced last week, and they are saying that it's related to unspecified security concerns, which I believe is just a code for them saying that they're trying to screw the Sikh community. Plain and simple, excuse the language, but that is my thought, that the government is just playing their games and trying to target once again the Sikh community in an unfair and unjust way. Now, this border is very essential. This is an opportunity in many cases for a once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage for the Sikh community and members to make that journey. So for them to turn around and to shut the border down, the whole community is outraged, as are other people, including ourselves. Now, the Sikh shrines in Pakistan are basically looking at it, and the groups are calling it a ban, or calling the ban a violation of international norms and moral values. We know that this is not right, and it needs to be reconsidered by Modi and his band of merry misfits, I would say. Of course, there are updates as well when it comes to the floods and the political war that's erupting over the injustice and perceived problems with the relief funds that are slowly coming in, but are far from sufficient to help the farmers who have, of course, been just devastated by the monsoons, by the flooding. The paddy fields were ready, but again, destroyed by the catastrophic floods that hit the region. You can read more about that on the Substack. As we are running out of time, I just wanted to hit on this last story because it's actually a positive story, something that actually put a smile on my face. Over in Australia, the Sikh community is actually taking part and moving forward with a program that is actually teaching Sikhs and other diasporas, or members of other diasporas that are from landlocked regions where swimming is not a common recreational activity, but they are teaching them basic life skills around water, basic swimming skills, and safety on the beaches, and waves and all of that sort of thing. So they are teaching these skills to allow the Sikhs and encourage them to take part in the beach activities and the lifestyle and the excitement that goes with having all of these activities on the water in these summer months that are coming up ahead in Australia. So again, a huge shout out to the different organizations, and the program is called Head Above Water. And again, very clear the message there, and that was spearheaded by Harpreet Kandra, who's a prominent Sikh community leader, and he's featured on a new SBS audio podcast also called Head Above Water, and that was for his work in developing this, what they call the pool program. The program is specifically designed, as I said, to build water confidence and safety skills among new Australians. So again, it is a grassroots initiative that is going to open up a lot of new and exciting opportunities for people to feel safe around the water and safe in the water to enjoy the hot summer months ahead. Angus?
Yes, a few perspectives from my side on this one. Australia, all I do know about Australia, fabulous quality of life, but certainly it does appear to be the case that everything that lives or breathes there is out there to try and kill you. So I think the safest place is just don't go in the water. Mind you, then they've got spiders and God knows what else. So anyway, a few thoughts on some of the stories that you brought up. I mean, the Kartapur corridor. We've talked quite often about this. Of course, this is a hugely important pilgrimage for Sikhs in the region. And anybody has any doubt about Delhi's attitude towards Punjabi Sikhs, this typifies what is going on. There's always this. Every opportunity, Delhi, the BJP, the RSS will always try and make life as difficult as they can for the Sikhs in the Punjab. And here is a prime example of this. This Gurdwara over the border in Pakistan, which sadly post-partition ended up on the other side of the border in Pakistan, has become a really, really important pilgrimage route. And that corridor has been negotiated between the two nations some time ago to allow people to freely travel to the Gurdwara, pay their respects to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and then return. But of course, Pakistan are quite happy with this. It's their territory, and yet they're the ones most likely to say, no, you can't come. But they have always been, yes, you're welcome to the Punjabi Sikhs. You are welcome to come and visit this Gurdwara. What does India do? No, they're closing the border to their own citizens. Now, this is reminiscent of the Iron Curtain. In other words, authoritarian regimes close their borders. Authoritarian regimes prevent people from leaving their country. If you're trying to stop people from leaving your country, that says more about you than them. And that's the key point here, is that people need to realise what India truly is. India is preventing its people, like the former Soviet Union used to do, it's preventing its people from leaving its own territory for whatever purposes. And this, of course, is one of the more noble purposes. But the fact is that India has closed the border under so-called security reasons. I mean, it's nonsense. Of course, it's nonsense. But there you go. Writ large, I think it's very clear to anybody who has any doubt about the authoritarian nature and the nature of the Indian government and who they're targeting specifically, who they are deliberately harassing. As I say, it's writ large there. So now, I want to touch on that grandmother story. This is actually, it is a shocking story, but this does highlight really the problems we have with this whole immigration argument, is that immigration policy is clear. It's, generally speaking, it's black and white, whether it's in Europe and across North America. If you are an illegal immigrant, you're illegal. By definition, you should not be there. You are breaking the law, and therefore you should be removed. That's the black and white of it. It's the same here. It's the same in North America and any other part of the world. I, for example, I just couldn't move to the Maldive Islands, much as I would love to, because I would be an illegal immigrant without doing it legally. But there are protocols with which to apply to become a resident or at least visit temporarily. Now, this grandmother, yes, sadly, literally has become a victim of exploitation. This is the exploitation. This is where the system goes wrong. In the past, yes, immigration law is black and white. The law is, generally speaking, black and white. If you break the law, that's it. You're illegal, you need to be deported. Now, in the good old days, laws could be slightly bent, ignored, whatever. The people who slipped through the cracks, and authorities would let it lie. This grandmother was a prime example of this. Of course she was law-abiding. Of course she was a decent citizen. And ultimately, they let her go. That was it. Now, when things go wrong and these systems are exploited, as has been happening over recent years, in other words, immigration has just become uncontrollable and gangs, whatever, are exploiting the law, and therefore people are pouring in through just simple exploitation. They are spoiling it for everybody else, for those law-abiding citizens like this grandmother. And that's where it goes wrong. When the system is exploited, is abused, then unfortunately the only way back is to enforce it black and white. In the old days, there were shades of grey. With the grandmother was a shade of grey. They allowed her to stay in because she actually was a good citizen. But unfortunately, when the system is taken advantage of, as sadly has been happening here in Europe and North America, the authorities, as I say, the only way back is to enforce it black and white. She is a victim of this black and white enforcement. That is a sad indictment of why things have gone wrong now. Because unfortunately, once again, it is the minority exploiting the majority, and the majority now having to pay for that. That, sadly, and as I say, this grandmother story is just a prime example of where it's all gone horribly wrong. So, and then the other story I want to pick up on, and I like this story. This is the Sikhs for Justice protest, whatever you want to call it, outside the consulate. I think this is great. And this is, aside from what they're doing, fantastic that they are doing it. Will it have an effect? Probably not. But ultimately, I think the message here is really important. This is a message we get across our audience very regularly. Get out there. Get your khalistan flags. It doesn't matter what the reason, the excuse is. Just get out there. Get your khalistan flag seen. Why? Because people see it and they ask questions. What is that flag? What's that all about? Particularly if you're peaceful and you're always there regularly, and that khalistan flag becomes a permanent fixture around people's neighbourhoods. You think, what is this flag? They ask questions. It's very slow. It's very subliminal. One protest will not have an effect, but 100 protests, 1,000 protests, even if there's just 3 of you on a street corner, if you're there regularly, people start taking notice and start asking questions. It's subliminal. It's like advertising. You think of these irritating adverts that are very low level, they're very regular, they come on almost every day, and you think, what's that about? I don't care. You don't think about it. But when you have a need for that certain product, what pops in your head? That weird little advert you never paid attention to, but it was always there quietly in the background. This is what we need to be doing, is getting that khalistan flag out there. Get your flags out there. Get a window sticker. Put it in your car. Have a sticker on your car. Everywhere. Just get the khalistan flag out, because it does work. It's subliminal. People see this and it just starts embedding in people's minds. And the more they see it, the more they start thinking, what is that flag? It's curiosity. And it brings people from outside the community into alignment with, because they ask the questions, they say, oh, actually, I totally agree with you. It's all about democracy. Of course, people by nature agree with democracy. So my message to the audience, James, is get out there, get your khalistan flags, even if it's for a protest. Always stay peaceful, really important. Always stay peaceful, smiley, happy, enthusiastic, very positive. That's very important, because it must be associated with positive feelings. But get out there, be seen, get the flag out there, get the flag seen. It's a beautiful flag. It's a very colourful flag. It's very eye-catching. So get out there. As I say, it doesn't have to be a major protest. You could literally walk down the street and just have it on your backpack or something. It doesn't matter. But get the flag out there, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And that will be today at Sinclair Center. If you want more information, just Google it. Right across from Waterfront SkyTrain station. So if you're taking public transit, very easy to get there. And one of the beauty things of this, Angus, is that it's right downtown at the waterfront, right across from the major cruise ship terminal. And of course, that means that tourists from around the world are getting the message and asking the questions of what is this khalistan issue? So it's not just the local community that's being brought into the mix to learn more, but also the international visiting community, which is massive down in that area. So again, today at Sinclair Center for the Indian Consulate, siege on the consulate as they're calling it. And again, this protest takes place every month on the 18th, except this one is extraordinarily important because of the replacement of the diplomatic representatives in Canada and in India in the moving forward of hopefully some type of resolution to the problems of transnational repression, but we won't hold our breath on that.
Indeed, fantastic. So as I say, get out there, get your flags out there and get them seen, indeed. Right, James, let's move on to my first story. And we've talked a lot about SB 509, which did pass, we're happy to say. And last week, Senior State Policy Manager Puneet Kaur joined legislators and advocates outside that very state capital to speak about the passing of this legislation. And of course, now heading across to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk for signature. This is her statement. Let me play you her statement outside.
Transnational repression is going to continue. These threats are not going to stop just because a bill has passed. And we must continue to use our voices, to use our collective power as a community. We were able to gather over 100 Sikhs at some of these committee hearings to come together and speak their truth, something that none of these people who immigrated from India had the ability or the safety to do in their own home country. So we need to be able to continue to mobilize and continue to organize and support not just our communities, all impacted communities, to combat transnational repression, to educate law enforcement and lawmakers about these threats, and to empower Governor Newsom to sign this legislation. We are handing him an incredible public safety win. This is a measure for public safety, not just for the Sikh community, but for all impacted, marginalized communities, for all diaspora communities. And that is partially why the Sikh community cares so much, because this bill is for the safety of all people. Sarbat da pala. That is a tenet of our faith, and it is seen in, live motion with hundreds of people showing up for this bill. Some people, elderly, traveling from as far as LA, they didn't have the safety to express their political opinions in their home country. And for people to come here and still face that fear of not being able to practice the most fundamental American right, freedom of speech, religion, political views, we have to make sure that there are public safety measures that are common sense and will apply to protect all people in place. And for that, we are incredibly grateful once again to our legislative champions, to all of the Sanghat members and folks who came out to the Capitol to support, to all of our advocates and community partners in and outside of the Sikh community. And I want to reiterate again, the work is just beginning. From here on, we are going to continue to do what we can to address transnational repression at the state and local level until we see impactful movements at the federal level. Because this is a federal issue, but the impacts are very, very local, as can be told by many of the folks standing here who have been personally impacted. So stay organized, let's stay mobilized, and keep paying attention to what's happening. We will continue to look to the community for support. We'll continue to look to our legislative champions for support. And thank you all.
Yeah, well done. I mean, I think the tribute really is to the Sanghat, is to those on the ground, the grassroots, obviously guided by a Sikh coalition and those leading them. But ultimately, well done to all them. Fantastic effort. And I think, James, that just shows what can be achieved just through grassroots movements.
Absolutely. And just one totally off topic comment, Angus, is I love that blue and yellow tie he has on there with the khalistan colors. It reminds me of the flag. So yeah, just beautiful. Totally off subject, but I just had to mention that and give a shout out to that because I love it. But absolutely, it is a huge, huge step forward from talking about it to actual action and making it pass. So good news all around.
Indeed. So well done to all of you in California for that great effort. And yeah, James, I think we're going to have to get special khalistan ties printed for both of us. It's a great idea.
I think so. That looks sharp.
Right. Okay, let's move on. And there's an awful lot going on, certainly here in Europe. I know it's reflected in North America, but this battle between left and right. And I said in the introduction, there's so much information, misinformation, manipulation. There's a lot of dark arts being played out behind the scenes at the moment that is designed, and we've talked a lot about this over the last week or two, about it's just designed to really polarise our population. This 80% I referred to recently, the majority of us who are normal, decent citizens, who just want to get on with each other quite happily and just get on with our lives. We are deliberately being manipulated and divided to serve some whatever nefarious purpose, and we are being forced almost to take sides, left or right, but extreme left or right. And so we are seeing this sort of rise of extremism, so-called rise of extremism on both left and right. And it is very, very concerning because, of course, caught in the middle are our ethnic communities, and particularly the Sikh community. And the Sikh community are almost unique in that they have this, certainly here in the UK, I know this for a fact, but I know it's the same in North America. They are so deeply integrated at so many positive levels in their host country. We talk about this term host country, but ultimately, you know what I'm saying, is that they have made such a success of their lives. They've become such an important contributor to the societies within which they live, that they are now torn between this patriotism to the host country's flag on one side, but ultimately they are still a Sikh community. And of course, these division, or that sort of subtle nuance of a, I won't even say a crack, it's not even a crack, but that subtle nuance of difference is what is being exploited by the extremists. And this is extremists on both left and right. And this is what we need to be so careful about, because what they are doing, they know what they're doing. They are trying, and it's very much reminiscent of the RSS tactic here. They are very keen to divide, and we talk about divide and conquer. All this is about is a divide and conquer tactic, from where, well, choose your conspirator of choice, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, what is evident to all of us is that we are deliberately being divided, whether it is between left and right, whether it is between amongst our own communities in our own society. And this is what we need to be aware of and try and fight back and unite against this. Now, there was an article that came out just yesterday, it was in the Guardian newspaper. This is a left-leaning paper here in the UK, and one of our friends of our show, Devinderjit Singh, he's a very high-achieving former civil servant, but he's also a very active campaigner for both the Sikh community and, of course, the Khalistan cause. A very articulate, very intelligent gentleman who's always a joy to talk to, I have to say. And he's done a huge amount of work. He is an advisor to the Sikh Federation, for example. He's done a huge amount of work for both the Khalistan cause and, of course, for the interests of the Sikh community. And he is a regular media spokesperson on behalf of the community. And he's been quoted in this article. He said, and of course he's been in the UK for a very long time. In fact, I think he was born in the UK. In fact, he was born in the UK. And he said, I remember my father marching against the National Front. That's one of the extremist racist groups that we used to have in the UK in the 1970s. It felt like it was a minority. The majority of people are still decent. How true. Nothing's changed there. But now the far right seems legitimised and popular, so said Devinderjit. And another example in this article that's brought out, it does bring out lots of examples of this sort of supposedly increasing hatred, this far-right extremism, this hate crime that's rising. A lady was interviewed who's returning from holiday via Heathrow, was warned by a WhatsApp community safety alert to avoid travelling into London, especially if you are from an ethnic minority. So again, this fear that's milling around. Again, it's just become almost this. It's subliminal, but it's there. It's this low-lying level of fear that's deliberately being injected into our society. So we're always walking around in fear, and that's a key word: fear. Fear equals control. But anyway, and it continues to say, this year, far-right groups have capitalised on asylum hotel protests, while the Raise the Colours campaign has led to St George's and Union flags being flown from lampposts and painted on roundabouts nationwide. And for those of our international viewers who might not know what this is about, we had, of course, this massive rally in London over the weekend, which is called Unite the Kingdom. And we've had a lot of protests here in the UK about this wretched conflict over in Gaza. And we've had a lot of pro-Palestine marches, which have been attended by the far left and have been really militarised almost by the far left. You see lots of Palestinian flags everywhere. It's usually from the left wing, always supported by a large Islamic population, of course, unsurprisingly. And I'm not even going to talk about the whole Jewish issue and anti-Semitism. That's a whole different discussion I don't want to get into today. But ultimately, Palestinian flags have been raised all around the UK. And people have said, hang on a second, this is the UK. So a lot of people have very deliberately said, OK, we are going to raise our flag and we're going to put it on lampposts almost as a backlash. And again, you can start to see where these divisions have been risen. So the far left have been deliberately posting up Palestinian flags all around the UK. Very provocative because, well, for whatever reasons. Anyway, I don't want to go into that. But ultimately, as a result, a reaction is that people, not even on the far right, but ordinary English patriotic people have been putting up our national flag, the Union Jack and the St George's Cross, which is a white background, red cross. That is the flag of England itself. So these have been appearing even in around London, around our home cities. These flags have appeared everywhere. Our little roundabouts, that's an alien concept to our American viewers, but we have these things called roundabouts, which are things that you drive round, and many of them are white circles in the road, and people have been painting red crosses, the Red Cross of England, on those things. So in other words, we've suddenly seen this rise of the British flag being flown everywhere. This has been interpreted deliberately by the far left and certainly the left-wing media as somehow being right-wing extremism, and this is what is starting to increase the anger. And again, you see the common theme here. It's increasing the anger. So the article continues. Tommy Robinson actually condemned the attack. This was, we talk about lots of these hate crimes, that dreadful rape that we've obviously talked about. And these attacks have been condemned by Tommy Robinson, this one of the figureheads on the right of centre, saying shortly before the rally there was a distinction between bad scumbags and decent minorities, and that as we attempt to unite this kingdom against mass immigration, I will speak personally of the sacrifices and great contribution that the Sikh community have made to Great Britain. Now, for Dabinderjit Singh, among community leaders dealing with the attack's aftermath, Robinson's remarks are part of a divide and rule tactic, yes, he knows what's going on, in which the right has tried to cozy up to Sikhs and contrast them with Muslims, while Sikhs with turbans and beards were increasingly targeted in racial attacks after 9/11. And he says, I think we are in more worrying, dangerous times than the 1970s, he believes. We have people playing on the sentiments of the majority in many countries, not just the UK, but the US, Europe and India. And then towards the end of the article it says, while the London rally was presented as an inclusive event, it attracted not only frustrated and unheard individuals, but also hardcore British nationalists and neo-Nazis, all of whom seek to spread their message. The prospect of a far-right Elon Musk-backed government no longer seems unthinkable, a representative of the UK Indian Muslim Council said. Now, there's an awful lot to pick apart here, and unfortunately we don't have the time here. But ultimately, what I would say, and I think even poor Dabinderjit has fallen into this trap a bit, 1 million people or more marched in London on Saturday. They have been labelled by all the mainstream media as far-right extremists. Now, I'll tell you now, they weren't. Yes, there were a very small number of far-right extremists. The vast majority at that rally, including Sikhs who were there and other people from ethnic minorities, were not racist xenophobes. They were people who were frustrated, who feel they are not being listened to. This is the danger. And yet they are being labelled as far right, which means those people, the innocent people who are being manipulated into believing that, people like Dabinderjit, for example, and many others like him, and particularly in the Sikh community as well, who are now turning on those people, ordinary decent citizens of the UK, they're seeing them as far right extremists. And these people are saying, no, we're not. But you can start to see how people are being manipulated on both the left and the right to turn on each other. Even within the Sikh community, I see on Sikh groups now in social media, Sikhs turned up to that rally to be represented. Sikhs spoke at that rally. They actually gave speeches at that Unite the Nation, at the Unite the Kingdom rally. But they are being turned on by other Sikhs saying, oh no, they're all far-right racists. Why are you joining them? No, they're not. This is the point. The majority who are there are the frustrated citizens of the UK because they are not being listened to. They are afraid, firstly, of uncontrolled immigration, which is nothing to do with racism. That's a very different argument. But again, the far left are trying to smear the boundaries there, saying it's a racist argument. It is not. And you can start to see how the manipulation is happening. And even Dabinderjit himself in this article, again is saying that Tommy Robinson is using the Sikh community. Well, again, I don't believe he is. And again, but you can start to see how the establishment or whoever it is who's behind this manipulation is trying to drive wedges between anybody who is united. They fear the Sikh community, so they're trying to divide the Sikh community. They fear the conservative movement here in the UK. The conservative movement are people just right of centre. And actually, ironically, does include people who are just left of centre who are now uniting. Remember this meme, for those who watched the show a few days ago, I showed that incredible meme which describes how far left we've all, or the narrative has gone, which means people who are left of centre are now being seen as far right. So these are people who are socialists by nature are now being seen as far right extremists. And they're saying, hang on, what's going on? But this is what's happening. And this is this weird manipulation that's going on, is that we are all being manipulated to turn on each other, to see any threat against the establishment, people who are starting to unite, and there is a large nucleus, a core of people in this country who number probably in their tens of millions now, who are uniting against whatever this agenda is, this divisive agenda. This agenda is partly being driven by uncontrolled immigration, which in itself is a deliberate tool to divide us for whatever reasons. Again, we don't have time to go into and actually analyse that fact. But uncontrolled immigration is happening. I am convinced it is a deliberate agenda, because it doesn't matter what each government says, Conservative or Labour, and it's the same in North America, uncontrolled immigration is causing a huge impact on our societies for many different reasons. That, of course, creates a backlash, a reaction. That reaction is anger, extremism at the far end, and that's what's happening. And unfortunately, so many commenters are falling into this trap. Even within the Sikh community itself, they're falling into this trap, trying to turn on those who actually are trying to unite against this agenda. And there's basically, it's an appeal to all of us out there. And I've made this appeal before. Do not fall into this trap. Try and take a few steps backward. Look at what's happening. Look at the mainstream media and understand you are being played. You are being manipulated to turn on each other. We need to find common ground amongst all these groups, left and right, whatever, to unite against essentially this agenda that is deliberately trying to divide and conquer us. Now, I just want to finish off. Because James, you referred to it in your rundown of the headlines, and here in the UK Gurdwara Alliance, which actually represents, I think it's 250 UK Gurdwaras. They've written a letter to the Home Secretary, our key representative minister in charge of all things like this. The Right Honourable Shabana Mahmood. She's a new appointee. Now, this letter is very predictable in many of its elements. It talks about, of course, increasing hate crimes, etc., etc. The bit I find particularly interesting, it does make a very clear point, and this is a very important point, and this is another divisive point, and this is a point we all need to be very much aware of about what's going on here. Referring to the Islamic population, the Muslim population. Here in the UK, we have a very large Muslim population. On the whole, very peaceful society, community that integrates to some degree, but an extremist element exists here in the UK, which has caused problems. And that, of course, has pushed the right wing and then in turn has increased right-wing extremism. It's given them an excuse to turn on the community. But there is a problem here, in that the Sikh community is not as large as the Islamic community here in the UK. There is an argument, and I think it's a legitimate argument, that there is a disproportionate favouring of our Muslim population here in the UK. The UK government and UK society as a whole, legally, socially, whatever, we have always tried to create this multicultural, integrated society. We've been very welcoming in this nation, despite the very fringe elements on the far right. And ultimately, we have a large Muslim population who've come from our former colonies, primarily Asia being one of the largest. As a result, this community has been very powerful in its lobbying, very much like the Sikh community, but almost turbocharged. And it's been very successful in its lobbying. As a result, there are feelings on many sides that the Islamic population here are advantaged and overly advantaged by government legislation. In other words, they are favoured as a community to the detriment of other communities like the Sikh community. And this has been raised, interesting, this is the point raised by the Gurdwara Committee. saying, and they've used, for example, the Conservatives, that's our former government, the right wing, following the EU referendum, recognised increased hate towards people of faith, and the two departments led by the Home Office published a hate crime action plan. However, the plan was heavily criticised by the Sikh community when the Home Office author divulged the case study on, for example, the machete attack on a Sikh dentist was airbrushed out of the plan, as the Conservatives wanted to only focus on anti-Semitism, that's of course the Jewish issue, Islamophobia and anti-Christian hate crime, but totally ignored the Sikhs. And the letter goes on, again, repeatedly referring how the Sikh community, or is it deliberate? We don't know, but the Sikh community has been pushed out of this legislation, has been pushed out of the whole hate crime initiative, is that we're trying to increase awareness of hate crime, reporting of it, etc., action against it, but it only seems to be favouring the Islamic population. Now, this is a problem, firstly, of course, for the Sikh community, but it's also a problem because it's now creating resentment, anger. You see, again, where this is leading. There is anger in the Sikh community. Now, this anger, ironically, is starting to align with the Hindu extremists who hate Muslims. And again, you start to see how all these nuances and this complex web. Tommy Robinson likewise falls into this web, who's aligned with the RSS against the Muslims. Now, we are not anti-Islamic. We are not against Muslims. Of course we're not. We all want to live as human beings. I believe one of the gurus, and forgive me if I've misquoted this, I'm sure our audience will correct me, but even one of the gurus I remember reading said, look, we are humans first, and only after that are we Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, or whatever. We're all human beings. We all want to get on along with each other. The 80% as I keep referring to. And yet, whatever the agenda, whether deliberate or otherwise, is that now, because the Islamic population is getting favoritism in terms of protection from society, all the other communities, particularly the Sikhs, say, well, what about us? So it's driving anger. And again, you can see, it's driving division, because there are those on the right, on one side of the Sikh community who are fighting one corner, and those on the other side of the Sikh community are fighting the other corner. And again, by nature, by definition, they're now turning on each other. And likewise, Bobby Singh, for example, turns up at the United Kingdom march on Saturday. There are those who say, no, you're joining the right-wing fascists. No, I'm not. No, they're not fascists. They're just frustrated people who can see this agenda and they are scared. So all of us, and again, full circle, James, back to what I was talking about, we need to start seeing what is going on. Start waking up. Please, people, wake up to what is going on. This is deliberate division. It's divide and conquer. They are trying to get into all our communities, whichever community you are, whether it's the Islamic community, whether it's the Sikh community, or indeed the Christian community, whatever. It is ultimately getting into our society, and they're trying to turn us against each other, left and right. Islam, Hindu, Sikh, Hindu. They are playing the same game that the RSS are playing. They're playing it across Europe and across North America. So the appeal, again, is wake up. Please understand we're all being played. Do not fall into these traps of trying to find blame in another community or another section of community. Don't do that. Take a step back, try and understand and analyse what's going on. We need to have these conversations. Don't be pushed by extreme left or extreme right. Yes, they exist, but they are tiny, but they are loud. They try and infiltrate our media. The mainstream media, I blame as well. They are pushing an agenda from the establishment. The mainstream media are guilty of pushing this agenda. So again, don't believe the mainstream. I don't need to preach to our audience about that. That's why you're watching us. But please try and tell other people, stop believing what you read, hear and see in the mainstream media. They are pushing an agenda. A lot of that agenda is to divide us, is to divide and ultimately control us. So please, my appeal, once again, as always, is please wake up. Do not be manipulated. Understand we are deliberately being divided to conquer us. We're being played, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And when you look at Canada in that context, the Sikhs are the third most targeted when it comes to racial crimes and other incidents of hate in Canada. Of course, Muslims and then Jews, those are the top two, and then the Sikhs follow in third place. So it just shows how deep that problem goes. And just a quick message, because we're running out of time here. is that I'm a firm believer that if you do not take time to have faith in yourself, if you don't have time to believe in yourself, then instead what you do is you start looking for weaknesses in others, or what you perceive as weaknesses even when they are not there, and therefore you are using that to target them in order to give yourself a sense of superiority over others. So if you start to believe in yourself first and foremost, and then look to faith, no matter what faith it is, I think that helps you to develop as a person, and it also gives you the opportunity to lift others up instead of pushing people down to give yourself that false sense of importance, Angus.
Indeed. They are trying to keep us all in fear. That's the point. And a fearful population is an easily controlled population. So do not fall into the trap of being fearful. We need to unite and fight back. Right, James, on that note, we must rush through our comments column because we're really running out of time. We've got 5 minutes to get through a lot of comments, big comments as well. Kuldip Kaur, thank you, Kuldip, for your comment. Great comment here. As you rightly say, you don't blame the British for the British Empire. I mean, how can we? None of us were around at that time. That's history. We can't change it. But what you do dislike, and I do agree with you on this, is that, what was the British involvement in 1984, the Sikh genocide, but particularly Operation Blue Star, dancing around the Sikhs' demand for public inquiry into this? Absolutely, they're ignoring that. And the whole anti sort of khalistan movement, certainly here in the UK. As you said, throughout history, the British Raj have been hell-bent on ending the Sikh Raj. The only difference now, they seem to be the puppet masters of the Indian state. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put it better myself, James.
Absolutely. And it just shows that, we can get, no matter what we report, these comments from our viewers are very important as well, to keep that perspective and to show that we are on the right path or that we're on the wrong path and we need to correct. But no, this shows that we are reporting it well, Angus.
Indeed. And this is why we must be suspicious of the British establishment and all our dark state establishment, whatever. They have their own agenda. Remember the British Empire? Those people have not gone away. They've just changed clothes and modernised. They're now 21st century. Nothing's changed. The human beings are still there. That 1 in 10 who like to control us, they're still there. It's up to us, the rest of us, to prevent it from happening. And Kuldip finishes off by saying, write your MPs. Absolutely. Encourage people to write to their MPs if you're sick of what's going on, you're fearful, you want hate crimes to be reported, whatever, write your MP. Do that, whether you're in North America, whether you're in Europe or here. Right, TC, thank you, TC, one of our regulars again. This is a warning, and sadly, again, we don't have time to go through this in detail. But yes, this is a warning. Don't fall for the narrative. That's the key sentence here, James. Don't fall for the narrative. We are being divided and conquered.
Absolutely. And if you are going to listen to everything that's told you that, is hateful, is dividing, then take the time to do your own research. Don't just listen to all the rhetoric. Do your research and make an informed decision.
And TC rightly makes the point about Pakistan. Contrast Pakistan to India. We talked about Kartarpur. Exactly. The attitude of Pakistan, ironically, is so much more positive for the community as opposed to India. Stay safe. Yes, again, along the sort of the same lines. No to racism, justice for Kaur. Absolutely. And this comment says, where are Sikh leaders? Talking about Sikh leaders have spoken to. This is a warning. Sikh leaders have spoken to the British government, and this is a whole subject I haven't unfortunately had time to talk about, is that the Sikh community, we've touched on it already, is being ignored by our government. And there is a warning now to our government. If you don't act, there's an awful lot of angry people out there, James. And I have to say, it's not just the Sikh community. All our communities are starting to get angry. You're starting to see that common theme again.
Absolutely. And those voices may not be violent. They will speak out at the polls and in recalling politicians. And that's where it matters, Angus.
Indeed. And as I always say, the people always win in the end. It might not happen today, it might not happen tomorrow, but in the end, the people always win. That's the warning to our leaders, is that you can do what you like, but we will win in the end. Likewise to Indian leaders as well. Wake up to that fact. Pam Singh Nee says, Angus and James, thanks for explaining detail and exposing the real truth of the establishment. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. Bobby Singh has been brave to speak out. You heard every word, and you have to agree, you guys are doing a great job. Well, thank you for your comment. This is important. UK is becoming unrecognisable. Yes, this is a warning, and I agree with you, Pam. Totally. I am scared, and I shouldn't be. I've just been preaching, don't fear. But yeah, there is a natural fear. What is happening? What is going on, James? And I know it's happening in North America as well, and across Europe. We're starting to live in fear. This is a deliberate tactic.
Absolutely. It's that divide and conquer again, Angus, that we talk so much about. And we need to really bring people together instead of allowing these people who are trying to divide and cause that anger and hatred in our communities. We can't let them win. It's just out of the question. We can't let them win.
Indeed. And 13 Coffins asked me to invite Gunter Failing onto the show. Absolutely. I think we'll try and get him back on. I have done a podcast. It was about a year ago, I think, I interviewed him. Fascinating interview. Do look back through our channel for that interview with Gunter Failing. We did talk a lot about khalistan, etc. But yeah, he's back in the news again. I'll do my best to see if we can get him back on the show, do another podcast with him, just to update his thoughts on that. Manveer Singh, interesting episode, guys. Keep up the good work. Now, the pair of you keep expressing what you believe to be the truth, and that's all we can ask for. Yeah, we're doing our best. Is it the truth? I don't know. It is our truth. I hate this expression, James. What is our truth? Well, we hope it's the truth.
Yeah. And we try to research and keep it balanced and fair and nonpartisan in the most regards. But again, we are trying to educate people about the khalistan movement as well. So, of course, we have that swing in the pendulum as to what we report and how we report it. But at the end of the day, again, we try to make sure that no matter what we're reporting, that it's an honest and a fair opinion.
Indeed. And the final comment goes to Azad, who says, great job. Well, thank you for your comment. Sikhs represent only 0.35% of the world's population. Yet, look how disproportionately powerful they have become. So well done to the Sikh community and on all their efforts. So keep at it. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. I have to rush through to the end now. But thanks so much for watching Perspectives. Do keep those comments coming. Thank you for all of you who have commented. Do let us know your thoughts. Do let us know if you disagree, if you think we're totally wrong or whatever. But we do like to hear your perspectives on the stories that we cover. It's very important we get your opinions on this as well. So do let us know. And of course, you can message us directly at message@satlugetv.com. If there's anything you'd like to talk to us directly about. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It's a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.